What is also happening in Manhattan is that Greg Gutfeld and Eric Bolling are sitting in an air-conditioned studio, having been driven there by their town cars. And they're being paid at least several hundreds of thousands of dollars to opine about how people living in poverty in this country are getting away with murder. Here is Greg Gutfeld and Eric Bolling not just trying to shame people for living in poverty, not just trying to get their moronic audience to perceive poor people as getting away with something, but they're also lying while they do it. Let's listen.
So what does it cost? A new report today shows taxpayers have spent $22 trillion fighting it. That's 3 times more than we've spent on all military wars since the American Revolution. And what about the results? Today's Census Bureau report says the poverty rate is 14.5%, which is higher than the 13.3% rate in 1967 once the programs were underway and implemented. Greg, let me go to you first. You've been talking about this for a while.
Pause it there for a second. So they're talking about the war on poverty. The poverty rate was 13.3%, not once they were in, I mean, she's being very clever here. Because their argument is that the war on poverty, Lyndon Johnson's Great Society programs have failed. From 1963, when Lyndon Johnson took office until 1970, as the impact of his Great Society programs were felt, the portion of Americans living below the poverty line dropped from 22.2% to 12.6%. It dropped by 10 percentage points. And from around that point, the poverty level basically sat at 13.3%. Contemplate what happened since 1970. The diminishment of unions, which has been shown to raise wages in any industry that they're involved in, not even for just people who have unionized jobs, raise wages by 11%. The stagnation of wages that has left the minimum wage, if you want to compare it to productivity, about $14 shy an hour of where it would be if it kept pace with productivity. You also have a tremendous amount of income disparity, which has a lot of money basically functioning to be completely unproductive regarding the economy. So, with that said, let's continue. And because they're only seconds into this and they've already basically lied about what's going on. Continue.
I have since the early 30s, Dana. This war against poverty was plotted to continue indefinitely. So the census counts a family as poor, but excludes the government spending that they get, the programs they get from that actual income. So what happens is it guarantees that programs will grow while poverty is unchanged because you're not counting the money they're getting. So it's not a war on poverty.
Oh my God. No, wait a second. Now Gutfeld, the only thing that he has said here that is accurate is that you are still considered poor even if you receive government assistance that puts you above the poverty level. Because in the absence of that government assistance, you'd be below the poverty level. But the idea that those numbers continue on the program or actually expand the program is ridiculous. People don't get paid. You don't get government assistance. And then even though from a census standpoint, you're still considered living below poverty, you don't get then more government assistance. No, the government records that it has assisted you and doesn't give you double assistance.
Could you imagine if they were counted and like the one year they get the assistance, they're out of the poverty level, the government's like, oh, we did it, and then take it away the next year and they're back under poverty level.
Right, of course. And then the following year, we sign you back up again. I mean, Gutfield, I don't know what his point is here, but you can easily find figures as to what the poverty level is if you don't include government assistance. That's the figure of people who are saved by our war on poverty. Continue.
It's actually a zombie that you can't kill. And it goes and nothing changes. And the poverty rate remains the same as you keep throwing money at it. That tells you something. Stop throwing money at it. This is crazy.
What would you do, Eric?
It gets even more insidious. They track the poverty level. They come up with their numbers as this is poverty. And if anyone falls below that poverty line, they continue to give them stuff.
Yeah.
And then they keep lowering that bar. So as the economy gets bigger and better.
They don't lower that bar. They don't lower that bar. It is based on the cost of food and housing and medical care. There's a sustenance index. You don't lower that bar. How much lower could it go? 23,000 for a family of 4? I would bet everything I know that Eric Bolling hasn't made less than $23,000 in a month for years. And that's being conservative. I imagine he's making that every week. Maybe every 2 weeks. But here's where here's his next lie. Cue it up. Go.
The bar goes down. That's why when we started, there were about somewhere around 20 million people on means-tested poverty programs, and now there's 45 million people that fall under the poverty number. As you point out, $22 trillion being spent. We got to raise the bar again, and President Obama did something that built.
Pause it. Okay, so what he's talking about here is that there's more people getting SNAP or food stamps. The threshold in which you have to fall in terms of income has not changed in food stamps. What happened is that following the Great Recession, more people lost their jobs, lost income, and so they became eligible. Not because the threshold was dropped, but because their incomes dropped. That's called an automatic stabilizer. So he's lying there. The threshold was not changed. It's just that more people had lower incomes. Here's the next lie.
Clinton didn't do. Bill Clinton put work rules in. You have to at least pretend you're looking for a job or try to get some of these mean-tested programs. He put that in.
Of course, the reason why people pretend they're working, because living on government assistance is such a vacation. Such a vacation.
And President Obama was the first president to pull that out. So it's literally more financially beneficial for you to stay on welfare programs than go out and get a job for a good percentage of the population.
Let's take it down into politics.
So this last lie that he was saying, that President Obama gutted the welfare reform, the work requirement. Clinton's welfare reform was disastrous, and the proof was in 2008 when jobs dried up. And a lot of people had to go on to food stamps because they had no ability to feed their kids. And what President Obama did was not gut the work requirement, but rather provided waivers, begged for such states, such liberal states as Utah, so that they could actually in the absence of jobs in their state, realizing that there was huge unemployment in their states and that there was simply no way for these people to find jobs, or that they had hit the lifetime cap of being below poverty for 5 years in their entire life. They needed more flexibility to provide services for these people, and they received a waiver only if the states could show the federal government that the states were actively doing something to either train these people for new jobs or to find them work in some field that had not been filled. So that's the final lie. But all of this at the end of the day is just to demonize people who are living in poverty. Because, you know, they must enjoy. I mean, after all, they have air conditioners, right? Or they have a TV. Unbelievable. These guys are just such scumbags that sometimes
They have on the screen the statistic, like 40% of poor have a widescreen, high-def TV and internet access.
holy
Not
cow.
internet access.
They have
No,
electricity too?
Not. Oh my God.
And the reason why what's her face started off this segment by saying poverty's at 14.5%. It's dropped by 5%. It's still above where it was in 2008, but it's dropped by 5%. Huh. How could that possibly be if we've expanded government assistance?